The Puck Portfolio with Andy McNeil.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio. I'm your host, Andy McNeil, and today we've got a special guest here to talk about the New York Islanders, who recently made a coaching change, bringing in Patrick Roy, got their first win under Patrick Roy on Sunday against the Dallas Stars in overtime. Michael Leboff from the Action Network Line Change Hockey Podcast. Michael, you're a big Islanders fan. I'd like you to sell me on this team because I just don't see it. I talked a little bit earlier today on my show, The Puck Portfolio, about how this team is just really, really bad defensively. Their defensive metrics are among the worst in the league. Even, looking at some of the stuff that's provided online by people like Mike Kelly from the NHL Network, who go a little bit deeper, slot shots, things like that. The Islanders grade out as arguably the worst team in the league in most defensive categories. So here we are. The Islanders are just outside the wild card race now. The teams behind them, like the Devils and the Pittsburgh Penguins, even the Capitals, have some games in hand on the Islanders. So not a great spot, even though they don't have maybe the toughest schedule remaining, but not necessarily an easy one either. So you see this team, maybe having a good second half and possibly pushing toward the playoff spot in down the stretch as we get past the All-Star break.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see it. It's weird. The Islanders are kind of in the same spot that they were in last year, on the fringe of the playoff mix, begging for a jolt, and Lamoriello traded for Bo Horvat, and it ended up working out for them really well, right? Like he was a huge part, and even though he didn't score much in carrying that team to the playoffs. And but this time, I actually think it's a pretty easy sell because you mentioned all the ugly defensive metrics. The Islanders are playing at around a 90-point pace, despite being the worst defensive team in the NHL. So if they could just get to like 22nd or 18th, you'd expect that number ticks up enough that they can really make a pretty good college try of this. And I've seen 2-1 out there to make the playoffs, and numbers maybe just a little north of that. I don't think those numbers are all that appealing, but if you do think, if you do think that they can get into the dance, I wouldn't like hate a long shot like sprinkle on like a conference ticket, because if they do get into the playoffs and the Wah move works, what's that mean? It means that by the time the playoffs start, they're going to be one of the hottest teams in hockey. They're going to be improved defensively. They'll still have the best goaltending tandem, arguably, in the NHL outside of Boston, I guess. So they should tick like every box you're looking for out of a Stanley Cup contender. They've got the number one defenseman in Dobson. They've got a great top six with the Horvat line, backed up by the Nelson line. And if they get better coaching and play better defensively, like, they don't really leave too many rocks unturned here. That said, of course, there's another way where they just don't improve defensively. Why? Doesn't have enough time to sink his teeth into the defensive issues. Just maybe the personnel isn't good enough on the back end. They still are missing Ryan Pulock. Him, Adam Pelech have barely played together this entire season. They've both been out for pretty long term at different times, and a little bit at the same time. Scott Mayfield's been in and out of the lineup. So I do think that there's a path where this does work out for the Islanders, but on a sheer like yes no to make the playoffs, I would have liked a better number than that 2-1.
Let me just ask you about where the Islanders are with their injury status of some of their top players right now. Ryan Pulock, he's still out of the lineup. Has he? Is there a better timeline on his injury?
No, I mean, most people are under the assumption that he broke his foot. Right, he blocked a shot, finished the game, and was not heard from for since he still hasn't been hurt. He hasn't skated. So for him, like the key is going to be when he starts skating, he'll probably be pretty close to going, because with a broken foot or a broken bone in the leg, you can't get going. You can't start skating, right? You got to do everything else before getting back on the ice. So he's a huge part of this team, even if him and Adam Pelech haven't been where they were during their salad days. Just having them together as a second pairing behind the Dobson Romanov number one pairing, which I think has been really good. The numbers won't tell you it, but that's just because the team has been such a mess defensively overall. If you have that top four, I think that the team should improve pretty drastically, because it also helps push guys like Scott Mayfield and Sebastian Aho and Mike Riley down the lineup to where they should be playing.
Yeah. So do you see like Lou Lamoriello adding anybody at the trade deadline, or just maybe minor pieces, or do you basically think we're looking at the roster sans the players that are currently injured right now, as the roster that we'll likely see when the playoffs start, if the Islanders are in the playoffs, of course.
Yeah, I think if they're around it, I think he will add maybe a depth winger. Obviously not going to see a Bo Horvat kind of trade this time around, but he made another deal which I think people overlooked the last year, was adding Pierre Engvall for a third round pick at the trade deadline, which for most teams might not seem like a huge pendulum swinger, but for the Islanders, who desperately needed speed in their forward ranks behind Matt Barzal, it made a huge difference and completely changed the makeup of their forward group. And so something like that, where they could find a suitable like bottom six winger to help maybe push Simon Holmstrom up the lineup, because they've been using him in a checking line role, and I think he's probably got a little bit more offensive upside uh, than that role would require. So if they can get, there's people always talking about Zach Parise coming back, and I don't know if that's going to end up happening, but that kind of level of a player, a guy who can play, between second, third, or even fourth line minutes to help push Matt Martin out of the lineup and spell Cal Clutterbuck here and there, and players like that. So nothing crazy, but they do need a little bit more oomph, I guess, in their bottom six.
Yeah, so as you know, on this show, we like to look ahead to the next day's NHL games. I've got a couple of bets for Tuesday. I'm on the Flyers and the Stars, very small bets. Actually, I'm on the Ducks a little with a smaller bet as well. Is there anything that you like for Tuesday as we look ahead here? I know there's 6 games on Monday, but oftentimes we can get a little bit more value by being first to the market here, and with most sports books having odds up for Tuesday's games. Is there anything that's sticking out from on the sides or the totals?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I think I'm going to be on the Columbus Blue Jackets tomorrow night against the Oilers. This price is just going to get too big. And the one thing I'll say about the Blue Jackets is that they give an honest effort, and I do think that as handicappers, like, we sometimes scoff at those kind of notions because they're really hard to quantify and they don't really show up. But it does matter, especially when you get to this point in the season for a team like that. A lot of young players, and it's a simple sell high spot on an Oilers team that's won 100 games in a row, and everybody's talking about betting them to win the Stanley Cup. Corey Perry's coming, so there's all this positive momentum. But first of all, could end up being like a surprise Calvin Pickard start. I wouldn't be shocked if
Yeah.
they go there, and that's never a bad thing.
So strategically, though, when you're looking to bet this one, is this one that you will probably wait
Yeah,
until closer to game time to fire on the Blue Jackets?
yeah, I think so. I think it's I might be one of very few people rushing to bet this one, so I don't think that this price is going to get you know blown to bits or anything like that. But I think that Columbus has a pretty good chance to play to their number, right? Like, it's already north of 3-1, and it should grow a little bit. And this Blue Jackets team has given some better opposition trouble all season. So yeah, and hey, it's this is hockey, and weird stuff happens. It's played on ice, so random stuff always helps the underdog. So I'm talking myself into it, but luckily we got some time.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, we'll be cheering for you. I don't know if we'll be able to tail that one with you lead off. Maybe if it gets totally out of hand, we can get something on the puck line or something like that. But yeah, we'll be cheering for the Blue Jackets. And thanks for joining us here on the Puck Portfolio. Have you again sometime soon. I can't say I'm rooting for the Islanders, though. I'm just going to be honest. I think they're going to waste everybody's time if they get into into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, I just don't see them making enough noise to make it worth anybody's time, including their own. But I guess we'll see. So yeah. Anyway, good luck with your bets here on Monday, leave off, and hopefully the Blue Jackets can get it done for you on Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks for having me.